"Are you scared, new girl? You look scared." The voice carried across the inspection lane before anything else did. Before the heat, before the diesel, before the long line of idling cars. Sergeant Tanner Voss leaned on the counter of the guard shack with his sunglasses pushed up into his hair and a grin built for an audience. He had one. 2 junior guards behind him, a young private named Webb beside him. And in the pedestrian lane, in the only patch of shade the canopy threw, a woman in plain civilian clothes who had not said a word. She did not flinch. The morning had 101 degrees in it, and she stood in all of them without moving, sleeves down. No rank, no name. A single in-processing folder squared against her chest, like a clipboard a person forgets they're holding. Voss thumbed her paperwork, slow, on purpose. He turned each page like it bored him. "A lot of words," he said, "for somebody who's going to be answering phones." The guards laughed. Webb laughed a half-second late, and then stopped, because something about the way the woman stood made the laugh feel like it belonged to someone else. She watched the lane, not him. That was the thing Voss could not have named if he tried. Her eyes moved once. Left lane, mirror, the guard shack window, the long, crawling line of cars baking in the sun. And then settled. She filed it somewhere. She said nothing. The gate ran the way every gate runs at 0900 on a weekday. 40 cars deep in the commercial lane. A delivery truck idling its brakes. A pair of contractors flashing badges. A soldier in a gray sedan 3 back chewing his thumbnail. The canopy throwing one narrow band of shade, and the whole rest of the lot turned to a griddle. 2 years Voss had owned this stretch of asphalt. He knew every rhythm of it, and the rhythm he liked best was this one. A new face with no rank, no friends, and nowhere to be but exactly where he told them to stand. He turned back to her, with the grin reloaded. "What's your name, new girl? Or do we just go with princess till somebody official tells me otherwise?" She did not answer. Her stillness was not the sullen kind. It had no heat in it at all. It was the stillness of a person standing in a current, letting the water find its own way around her, conserving everything for the part of the day that would actually require it. Inside the shack, Sergeant First Class Hollis Boyd watched through the glass. 41 years old, 2 bad knees, and a chest full of ribbons he never talked about. He had seen a lot of people stand at a lot of gates. Nervous newcomers shifted their weight. They checked their phones. They smiled too much at the guards, hoping to be liked, hoping to be fast-tracked through. This one did none of that. Wait even. Hands loose. Breathing slow and deep and deliberate, like a swimmer at the edge of cold water. It pinged him wrong. He almost stepped out. The shack phone rang, and he turned to answer it, and the moment closed. "Tell you what, sweetheart." Voss set the folder down and spread his hands, generous, like a king. "Stand right there in the shade of nothing, while I figure out if you're real. System's a little slow today." The screen behind him was plainly, brightly up. He wanted her to break. He wanted the plea, the sigh, the small surrender that would give him the rest of the scene. He had run this gate for 2 years, and he knew the rhythm of it, the way new people folded when you made them wait, the way a little power, applied with a smile, turned strangers into staff. The woman looked at him for the first time. "I'll wait," she said. 3 syllables. Flat. Unbothered. The voice of someone for whom waiting was not a punishment, but a profession. It landed wrong on Voss. He had expected fear and gotten a closed door, and he did not have a key for it. So he did what loud men do when the room does not laugh on schedule. He raised his voice a little. He found something else to disapprove of. He told the guards to keep the line moving, as if anyone had stopped it but him. Boyd, back at the answered phone, watched the exchange through the glass with one ear on a supply sergeant complaining about a manifest. He could not have said why the woman held his attention. She was doing nothing. That was the point. In 23 years, he had learned that the people worth watching at a gate were almost never the loud ones. The loud ones told you everything in the first 10 seconds. It was the still ones who made you wait. And the waiting was where the truth lived. He found himself hoping, vaguely, that Voss would get bored and let her through before the kid talked himself into something he could not take back. Voss did not get bored. Bored was the one thing Voss never got with an audience in front of him. The woman stepped fully into the sliver of shade and went still as stone, the folder against her chest, her eyes already back on the lane. And 3 cars over, in the slow crawl toward the inspection point, a battered gray sedan eased forward 1 length, its driver's hands locked at 10 and 2, his eyes fixed on the gate and not on the road. The contractor van died in the commercial lane at 0900 and made everything worse. It coughed once and quit, square in the throat of the gate, and a second driver behind it leaned on a horn and held it. Voss strode out into the heat to handle it, and handled it the way he handled everything. Loud, fast, and badly. He told the van to move, which it could not. He told the horn to stop, which made it worse. The line backed up into the road. Tempers climbed with the temperature. The woman in the shade read it in one glance. She did not step out of her lane. She did not raise her voice. She spoke to Webb, who happened to be nearest, in a tone so even it sounded like instruction read off a card. "Push the cones back 15 meters, she said. "Keep the lane sterile. Don't crowd the vehicle. Bring the line in single file past the dead van, not around it." Webb did it without thinking. He pushed the cones. He cleared the standoff. He fed the cars through single file, and in under a minute, the gate breathed again. Then he realized he had just taken an order from the new girl, and his ears went red. It was the word sterile that had done it. She had not said clear the lane or move the cones back. She had said, keep the lane sterile, the way a person says it who has stood at 100 cordons, where sterile meant the difference between everyone going home and a name read off a wall. Webb did not know any of that. He only knew that the word had a weight to it, and that his hands had obeyed it before his pride could object. Inside the shack, Boyd had heard 2 words through the open window, and both of them had stopped him cold. Sterile. Standoff. Civilians did not talk like that. Admin transfers did not talk like that. People who answered phones did not, in the middle of a traffic snarl, reach for the exact vocabulary of a standoff distance, like it was the first tool in the drawer. He looked at her folder on the counter where Voss had tossed it. He looked at her hands. He started, quietly, to wonder. She was watching the vehicles. Always the vehicles first, then the people. Her eyes went to the cars the way a doctor's go to the chest before the face. It was a small thing. It was the kind of small thing that took Boyd a full career to learn to see. He thought about a road outside Kandahar, 15 years gone, and a quiet woman in a heavy suit who had walked up to a culvert his whole platoon had been about to drive over, and who had knelt in the dust for 40 minutes and then stood up and waved them through like she was holding a door. He had never learned her name. He had never forgotten the way she moved. Slow, economical, every motion paid for in advance. He looked at the new girl in the shade and felt the back of his neck go cold with a recognition he could not yet justify. It was nothing, he told himself. A clerk with good instincts and a sharp tongue. He almost believed it. Voss came back from the van sweating and sour, embarrassed that the gate had run smoother for 10 seconds without him touching it. He found the source of his embarrassment standing exactly where he'd left her. "Nobody asked you, new girl," he said. "You're a guest here. Act like one." He scooped her folder off the counter. "I'm gonna hold this, for verification." She let him. She did not reach for it. She did not argue. She watched the battered gray sedan 3 cars back, its engine running rough, its driver sweating through his shirt in the air conditioning, and her jaw set by a fraction of an inch that nobody caught. Voss tossed the folder back onto the counter like litter and turned to find someone else to manage. Behind him, unseen, the gray sedan rolled one more car length toward the inspection lane. By 0930, Voss had made it a sport. "New girl can make herself useful," he announced, loud enough for the shift. He pointed across the lot at the Chopette. "Gate could use coffee." "Go on. 3 sugars in mine." It was not about coffee. It was about the walk away and the walk back, the errand that would turn a stranger into staff, the small obedience that would tell everyone watching exactly where she ranked. The woman did not move. "No," she said. One word. It cut the laughter off at the knees. Voss covered it by christening her on the spot. "Princess, then," he said, grinning. "We got ourselves a princess at the gate." It spread the way those things spread. One of the junior guards tried it. Webb said it once, uneasily, testing whether it was allowed, and Boyd leaned out of the shack and shut him down with a single look that Webb felt in his spine. "Her name's on a roster somewhere," Boyd said, low, to Webb. "Use that." Voss heard it and grinned wider, because a relic objecting was the same to him as applause. He pulled the shift in tighter. He told the story of the new girl who thought she ran the gate. He made the morning into a bit, and the bit got laughs, and the laughs told him he was still the biggest thing under the canopy. The woman catalogued it. Not with anger, with the patience of a person building a record. The time on the clock above the canopy. The camera bolted to the steel beam. The names on the guards' uniform tapes. She took out a phone and photographed nothing dramatic at all. The lane, the line, the clock, the reflex of someone who had learned, somewhere expensive, that the truth keeps best when you write it down as it happens. It was the same reflex that had kept her alive on 3 continents. You log what you see. You time-stamp it. You do not trust your own memory of a bad morning, because memory bends toward the story you wish were true, and the work she did for a living did not permit a story that was not exactly correct. So she logged Voss the way she logged everything, without heat, without hurry, a record building itself in the background, while the foreground stayed perfectly still. He thought he was running a gate. She was running an investigation he did not know he was the subject of, and she had been, since the moment he opened her folder too slowly. What she did not yet log, because she was not yet certain, was the gray sedan. But her eyes kept going back to it. 3 cars deep. Engine rough. A driver who watched the camera and not the road. She filed it under not yet and waited, because being sure took exactly as long as it took. She catalogued one more thing while he performed. The gray sedan, 3 back in the line, had not moved up when the gap opened in front of it. Every other car had crept forward the moment the contractor van cleared. The gray one held its place, engine rough, and its driver's eyes went to the canopy and the guard shack and the camera, the same circuit over and over. She watched him watch the gate. She did not say anything yet. She had learned, in a harder school than this one, that you do not announce what you see until you are sure, and that being sure takes exactly as long as it takes. Boyd stepped half out of the shack. "Voss, ease off." Voss waved him away without looking. Boyd was a relic in his mind. Old knees, old war, old caution. The gate was Voss's. Boyd retreated into the shade of the shack, but now he was watching only her, and what he saw was not a victim. What he saw was a person waiting out a storm she had clearly weathered before, standing in the rain because she knew it would stop, and she would still be there when it did. She was not afraid. She was working. He just did not yet know at what. How many people, the storyteller asks you, get written off in the first 30 seconds by the loudest man in the room, sorted, labeled, and filed under nobody before they've said a word? Some of them stay sorted, and some of them are simply waiting for the room to learn what it's looking at. If you came here for the second kind, subscribe to Honor Tales and stay to the end, because the loudest man at this gate is about to find out which kind he insulted. The gray sedan's engine ticked over once, twice, and went quiet in the inspection lane. Voss escalated the only way he knew how. He put it in writing. He sat at the shack terminal and typed up a gate incident report on the civilian in the pedestrian lane. Subject, non-compliant. Subject, argumentative. Subject, refused a lawful security order and interfered with gate operations. None of it was true, and all of it was now in the system, time-stamped and official. And he grinned the whole time he typed it. He had done it before. There was a rhythm to that, too. A contractor last spring who had complained about the wait. A transfer in the winter who had asked for his name. A short string of fabricated non-compliance entries, each one a little brick in the wall that kept the gate his and kept the new people quiet. He thought of it as running a tight post. The records would later call it something else. He read the report back to himself and liked it. Subject refused a lawful order. Subject interfered with gate operations. 4 sentences. Time stamped at 10:17. He clicked submit and felt the small, clean satisfaction of a man who has just made a problem into someone else's problem, and who will never, in the version of the day he is living in, have to answer for a single word of it. Out in the shade, the woman waited, and Boyd watched her wait. And the longer he watched, the colder he got. He saw the watch first. It was turned face inward on her wrist, the crystal against the skin. He saw no rings, no ID lanyard, a single sterile bag at her feet, packed flat, nothing hanging off it, nothing that could snag or flash or catch a light. He saw the deliberate way she squared her gear with the side of her boot, without looking down. Those were not the habits of a person who answered phones. Those were the habits of a person who had spent years making sure that nothing on her body would glint, snag, rattle, or give her away. People learned that habit in exactly one kind of work, and it was not administrative. Boyd went to the terminal and quietly pulled the in-processing roster. He looked for the new arrival, the admin transfer, the clerk. He found the billet line and read it twice. It did not say admin. It said EOD detachment. Non-commissioned officer in charge. His stomach dropped a half-inch and stayed there. Explosive ordnance disposal. The people who walked toward the thing. And not a junior one either. The one in charge of all of them on this post. He looked back out at the woman in the shade, and he saw the stillness for what it was. Not the stillness of fear. The stillness he had only ever seen. In people who worked, for a living, around things designed to kill them, and who had decided a long time ago that moving fast was how you died. And he understood, with a sinking weight, exactly what was happening at his gate. The post's new senior bomb tech had reported in early, in civilian clothes, the way people do, and the gate had spent 2 hours calling her princess and telling her to fetch coffee. And one young sergeant had just filed a fabricated report against her and clicked submit. Boyd had been at this long enough to know that the universe occasionally hands a loud man precisely the wrong person to be loud at. He just did not yet know how completely. Voss came back, smug, paper in hand. Reports in the system, he told her. Non-compliance, interfering at a security checkpoint. You're gonna want a lawyer up before you even get a badge, princess. Okay, she said. She did not argue. She was looking past him at the gray sedan, at the driver sweating through his shirt, at the hands locked too tight on a wheel that was not going anywhere. Boyd reached for the shack phone to call the EOD detachment and confirm what the roster had just told him. Across the lane, the gray sedan's door swung open. The driver stepped out, left the engine running, and walked fast, too fast, toward the fence line, not looking back. A running car with no driver is a sentence with no period. Everyone at the gate felt it land at once, but two people understood the grammar. Boyd understood it, and the woman in the shade understood it. From opposite sides of the lane, in the same half-second, their training snapped to the same gray sedan. One of them ran the gate. It was not the one running the gate. Boyd moved first, because he was already moving. He crossed to Voss and took him by the arm. "Sergeant, that car." His voice had dropped into a register Voss had never heard from him. Driver bailed and left it running in the inspection lane. "Lock it down. Now, push everyone back. And the woman you've been clowning all morning, you leave her be. If she's who I think she is, you want her, not you, anywhere near that vehicle." Voss laughed. It was reflex. Then he looked at the car, and at the empty driver's seat, and at the fence the man had run for, and the laugh died in his throat with nowhere to go. "Who is she?" Voss said. It came out small. Not a challenge anymore. A question from a man who had just felt the floor tilt. "She's the one you spent the morning making fetch coffee," Boyd said. "Now do your job. Push them back." But Voss did not push them back, because Voss had never once in 2 years had to do the thing the gate was actually for. And the difference between playing soldier and being one had just walked up the lane in a gray sedan and parked itself in his inspection point. "Webb!" Voss's voice cracked on the name. "Go! Go look. See what's in it." Webb went because he was told to. It is a terrible thing, to be 20 years old and ordered toward a car that the back of your neck already knows is wrong, and to go anyway because a sergeant said so, and you have not yet learned that some orders are given by men who do not understand them. He walked up the lane to the gray sedan and put his hands on his knees and looked through the windshield, and then he backed away with his face the color of paper. "Propane," he said. 2 tanks. There's a car battery. Wires. There's a phone taped to the dash." His voice climbed. "There's a phone taped to the dash." The goat stopped breathing. Voss froze. The performance drained out of him in real time, like water out of a cracked glass. And what it left behind was a scared young man who had spent 2 years playing soldier at a gate and had never once seen the real thing walk through it. And while he froze, the woman moved. Not away. Toward the shack, toward the radio, toward the flat, hard cases she had stowed against the wall when she arrived. The cases nobody had thought to ask about, because who looks twice at the luggage of a clerk? Her face did not change. If anything, it got quieter. Her breathing slowed further, down to something tidal, and her hands found the radio and keyed it with the unhurried economy of a person who had done this on the worst days of her life. "GateNet. This is the on-scene EOD response," she said. "Clipped. Clean. Every word a tool. I have a suspected vehicle-borne device, inspection lane, single occupant fled on foot. I am initiating render safe. Establish a 300-meter cordon and hold all traffic." She set the radio down and opened the first hard case, and for the first time all morning, her hands were doing what the rest of her had been built for. Boyd watched her and felt the recognition finish forming. Complete now? Certain. Not a clerk. Not a transfer. The quietest person at the gate was about to be the only one inside the wire who knew what to do, and she had known it, he realized, since the moment the gray sedan refused to creep forward in the line. The woman everyone had called the new girl had just become the only calm thing inside the wire. If you've ever watched the quiet person in the room turn out to be the one who knew exactly what to do, subscribe to Honor Tales now, before the reveal, because what she does next is the reason this channel exists. The gate alarm climbed to a long, flat tone, and the word "lockdown" crackled out across every speaker on the post. There is a reason some people walk toward the thing the rest of the world runs from, and the reason is never simple, and it is never free. At the detachment vehicle, in the long minute while the gate emptied, Master Sergeant Marin Calloway opened the flat black cases and laid out the bomb suit with the unhurried economy of 1,000 repetitions, plate by plate, strap by strap. Her hands knew it the way other hands know a rosary, and for the only time in this story, the door to the inside of her opened. Afghanistan. Summer, 2013. She was 22 then, a junior tech with sunburned hands, and the man kneeling in the dirt beside her was her apprentice, Specialist Asa Whitfield, 21 years old, who laughed too loud and packed his kit too heavy and called her by her last name, like it was a joke they shared. A compound road, a wall of dried mud the color of the hills behind it. A patrol pinned down on the far side, 12 men flat behind that wall, and a primary device buried under the only road that could get them out. She and Whitfield worked it the slow way, the right way. The way that took an hour you did not feel passing. He had wanted to rush it. They always wanted to rush it at 21, with the patrol pinned, and the radio in their ear, and the sun climbing. She had taught him the first law of the work, the way it had been taught to her. The device does not care that you are in a hurry. The device has all the time in the world. The only way to beat it is to have more patience than the man who built it, and the man who built it has nothing else to do. What they did not see was the second one, the secondary. Command-wired, tucked in the ditch, set by a patient man on a far hill who knew that where you find one device, you will soon find the people who come to take it apart. It functioned at 11 minutes past the hour. She would not, in all the years after, describe it. The narration will not either. Only this: Whitfield was there, and then the world was white and full of noise, and then he was gone, and a fistful of steel had driven into her back, below the shoulder blade, and lodged against the bone. She did not stop. She crawled back to the primary, with her own blood slicking the inside of her suit, and she rendered it safe with hands that would not shake until that night, because the 12 men behind the wall could not move until the road was clean, and she had decided a long time before that morning that the patient ones are the ones who walk back in. She refused evacuation until the road was clear. 26 minutes she worked, face down, with steel in her back, and her partner gone in the ditch behind her, and she called every step out loud, in a voice the patrol said afterward they would hear for the rest of their lives, because it never once rose. That is the thing nobody understands about people who walk toward the device. They are not unafraid. Fear is not the enemy. Fear is information. The thing that lets them keep walking is something colder and steadier than courage. A decision, made once, in private, that some roads have to be walked, and that they would rather be the one walking than the one who sent someone younger. They gave her a bronze star with a bronze V for valor for it, and a Purple Heart for the steel in her back, and a call sign the team chose because she had not raised her voice once the entire time. Stillwater. Back at the gate, in the present, the EOD battalion net was live, and a voice was asking who was responding. Another voice answered with a single word, and across the cordon, Sergeant First Class Hollis Boyd heard it come through the speaker, and finally, quietly, said it out loud to himself. Stillwater. The trap was closing, and the man it was closing on was Sergeant Tanner Voss, who was no longer running the gate, who was now just another body moving in the wrong direction. Calloway sealed the last clasp at her throat and lowered the visor, and the world went small and quiet inside it, her own slow breathing the loudest thing in it. Outside, 200 meters back, every soldier on the post was moving away from the gray car. Every soldier but one. The bright line in this work is not a metaphor. It is a literal distance, measured in meters. And on one side of it, you protect people, and on the other side, you become the reason they die. Sergeant Tanner Voss crossed it at a dead run. There were 2 people still inside the radius. A civilian contractor's hatchback had stalled near the barriers when the lockdown dropped, and the driver sat trapped behind a Jersey wall he could not move, hammering the horn, screaming at glass. And 10 meters from the gray sedan stood Private First Class Dorian Webb, frozen solid, his boots welded to the asphalt, close enough to the device to die with it, and unable to make his legs obey. This is the moment the whole morning had been walking toward, though no one at the gate would have framed it that way. 2 hours of cheap theater, and now the bill. There was a man in a suit walking toward the bomb, and there was a man in a uniform with 3 stripes who had spent the morning asking other people if they were scared, and the gate was about to find out, in front of every camera under the canopy, which of them was which. Voss did not go to either of them. He bolted for the rear of the cordon. He knocked a cone spinning. He left Webb where he stood, and the civilian where he sat, and he ran with his arms pumping and his face white. And on his way out, he collided with a figure in a bomb suit walking the other way. He shoved her. Both hands. A panicked, snarling shove with all his weight behind it, the kind that would have put a smaller person on the ground. "Move!" he spat. "Get out of the way!" She did not break stride. The shove bounced off her like storm water off stone. The heavy suit did not so much as turn. The visor did not tilt toward him. She took the impact through her shoulder and kept walking, slow and even, toward the car. And the only acknowledgement Voss got that he had touched her at all was that she paused, 1 beat, and looked at him through the visor, and smiled. It was the first time all morning. There was no warmth in it. It was the smile of a person who has just had a long question answered. He had asked her, at 0840, with the whole shift watching, if she was scared. He had asked it again with his eyes every hour since. Now he had his answer, and the answer was standing still in a bomb suit while he ran, and the answer was not about her at all. The fear at this gate had a name. It had 3 stripes and a fabricated report time-stamped at 10:17, and it was sprinting for the rear of the cordon as fast as its legs would carry it. She had absorbed every word of his all morning, and not one of them had moved her a single inch, because words are not the thing that frightens a person who has knelt over a live charge with steel already in her spine. The man who throws words is never the dangerous one in the room. The dangerous one is the quiet one, deciding whether to bother answering. She keyed her radio without looking away from him. "Webb." Her voice came calm and close through the gate speakers, his name in it, like a handhold thrown to a drowning man. "Look at me. 1 job. Get the driver in the hatchback out the passenger side and behind the concrete. Then you follow him. Move on 3. 1, 2, 3. And Webb moved. Given 1 task and 1 voice that did not shake, the boy found the far edge of his nerve and crossed back over it. He hauled the screaming civilian out the passenger door, shoved him behind the concrete barrier, and went down behind it himself, and the radius was clear of everyone it did not need to hold. It is a strange mercy, what a steady voice can do. Webb had frozen because the morning had given him nothing to hold on to. Only Voss's noise, and then Voss's panic, and then the long, roaring silence of a car that might end him. What Calloway handed him was smaller and stronger than courage. 1 task, a count to 3, a direction to move. That is the whole secret of people who work in the worst minutes of other people's lives. They do not ask the frightened to be brave. They give them 1 thing to do with their hands, and they say it in a voice that has decided in advance not to shake. The bravery comes later, if it comes at all. The hands come first. Everyone but her. She turned her back on the fleeing sergeant. She faced the gray car alone, the suit heavy on her shoulders, the canopy empty behind her, and the long lane empty ahead. And she took the first slow step toward the one thing on the entire post that everyone else was still running away from. She crossed the lane the way a tide comes in, slow, certain, impossible to hurry and impossible to stop. 40 meters of open asphalt and not one other living soul on it. Behind the cordon they watched her go, the guards, the held cars, Boyd standing at the tape with his jaw tight, Voss pressed against a barrier at the rear, with his chest heaving. The net was silent except for her. Every few steps her voice came across it, flat and exact, narrating her own approach, so the men in the trucks rolling up behind the cordon would know precisely what she found. Approaching the vehicle, 2 propane cylinders, rear bench, 1 automotive battery, passenger floor. Initiator appears to be a cellular phone, taped to the dash, wired forward. A pause, the title breathing. "Charge is real, I'm going to work." She did not rush. Rushing is how the road takes you. She had a word for the thing in the car, and the word wasn't bomb. The word was problem, the same flat word she used for a flat tire or a bad manifest, because a problem is something you solve in order, and a bomb is something you fear. And fear has killed more good techs than any charge ever built. So she made it a problem. She gave it edges and steps and a sequence. She read the device the way Boyd had watched her read the cars all morning. The whole of it first, then the parts, the geometry of the wire, the path the current wanted to take. She isolated the initiator. She separated the taped phone from the charge with a care that looked, from 40 meters, almost gentle. She killed the battery. She called each step as she made it, and each call came back the same way it left, unhurried even, the voice of Stillwater. There was no drama in any of it. That was the part the watching soldiers would talk about later, the part none of them had expected. They had braced for something fast and loud, a movie, a hero. What they got instead was a person kneeling at an open car door in a heavy suit, working slower than seemed possible, narrating each motion to a radio in a voice you could have set a clock by. The most dangerous object on the post, taken apart by the calmest pair of hands on it. It did not look like courage. It looked like patience with the volume turned all the way down, and that, it turned out, was the same thing. It took her 9 minutes. She gave the net the number herself when it was done. Devices controlled, initiator separated, power source removed. Render safe complete. The vehicle is no longer a hazard. Send the team forward. And on the net, the battalion answered, and the answer told the whole post who had been standing in the shade all morning. "Copy, Stillwater. Good work. Battalion en route." At the cordon, Boyd straightened. He turned to the young guards around him, the ones who had laughed at Princess 2 hours before, and he told them in a low, flat voice exactly who that was on the lane. "That's the new senior tech for the post-EOD detachment," he said. "That's the non-commissioned officer in charge. She outranks every soul at this gate, and most of the ones inside it. And that call sign you just heard, Stillwater, you remember it. They only give a name like that to one person in a generation, and they give it for the kind of day none of you ever want to have." He let that sit. "She stood in our shade all morning and let a buck sergeant call her Princess, and she never said a word, because she was watching the car none of us saw. That's who you were laughing at." He told them what the call sign cost. He told them she had walked back into worse than this with steel in her spine, once, so that 12 men could go home. They stopped looking at the car. They started looking at her, and not one of them would ever again assume that the quietest person at a gate was the least of it. and Voss watched the new girl walk back from a live bomb he had run from, and his face came apart one piece at a time. Confusion first. She's EOD? Then disbelief as Boyd's words reached him across the cordon. She's the non-commissioned officer in charge of the detachment. She's senior to every soldier at this gate by a country mile. Then recognition, slow and sickening. Stillwater, he had heard the name. Everyone in the command had heard the name. It was the name they said, when a device could not be beaten by anyone else. And then horror, pure and total, as the morning replayed itself behind his eyes. The folder, the waiting in the sun, the coffee, the report he had typed and time-stamped and filed. Princess. Are you scared, new girl? He had heard the name long before he ever saw her face. Everyone in the command had. Stillwater was the call you put out when the device on the table could not be beaten by anyone else. The tech they flew across a country to a problem nobody else would touch. He had said the name himself once, telling a story at a bar to impress people. The legend of the bomb tech who finished a render safe with shrapnel in her own back. He had told it like it belonged to him. And he had spent the morning telling its owner to go get him coffee, 3 sugars, and asking her, over and over, if she was scared. A staff vehicle rolled up to the cordon, and Lieutenant Colonel Grant Easterling, the EOD battalion commander, stepped out before it had fully stopped. He crossed to the tape as Calloway came off the lane and lifted her visor, her face damp and perfectly calm. Master Sergeant Calloway, he said it loud enough to carry. Stillwater. Glad it was you on the gate today. She lifted the visor higher and looked once across the barrier at Voss, calm, unhurried, finished, and said nothing at all. She did not need to. She had answered him already, in the only language the morning had left him able to hear, and the answer had been a slow walk toward the thing he ran from. There was nothing to add to it. Words had been his weapon all day. She had never once reached for them, and she did not reach for them now. Easterling followed her eyes to the sergeant pinned against the rear barrier. He did not raise his voice. He told the provost to detain the sergeant and to pull every gate log Voss had touched. The reckoning did not need volume. The facts did all the work. The provost marshal pulled the entry control records that afternoon, and Voss's false report on Calloway did not sit alone. It sat at the end of a string of them, a contractor in the spring, a transfer in the winter, a pattern of fabricated non-compliance entries, each one filed against a newcomer who had waited too long or asked the wrong question, each one a brick in the little wall that had kept the gate his. Boyd gave a clean, flat statement and signed it. The cameras under the canopy gave the rest, but it was not the lies that ended him. Lies might have earned a counseling and a transfer. It was the 4 seconds of video in which Sergeant Tanner Voss turned his back on a frozen private and a trapped civilian and ran, leaving 2 men inside the radius of a live device to save himself. That was the thing no statement could soften and no rank could wave away. He was relieved at the gate that same day, pending investigation, his post handed to someone who would not abandon it. The investigation would take its own slow course, the way those things do, and the channel will not pretend to know its ending. But the gate knew. The shift that had laughed at Princess at 0900 stood very quiet at 1600 and didn't meet his eyes. There is no rank low enough to hide inside once a post has watched you run. He had spent 2 years building a small kingdom out of other people's first day, and it came down in a single afternoon, brick by fabricated brick, and the thing that pulled it down wasn't revenge. Nobody at that gate lifted a hand against him. He simply stood in the daylight he had made, and the daylight was enough. There is a particular satisfaction, the storyteller will admit, in watching the quiet one proven and the loud one emptied. in watching a morning of cheap power cash itself out in a single afternoon of consequences. If that satisfaction is why you're still here, then you already belong to this channel, and you should subscribe to Honor Tales so the next one finds you. Later, when the cordon was down and the lane was open, and the post had gone back to pretending it was an ordinary Tuesday, Calloway found Webb. The boy could barely look at her. He had frozen. He knew he had frozen. He started to say it and she stopped him. "You came back," she said. He blinked. "You froze. Everybody does. The first time the real thing shows up. That's not the part that matters." She looked at him the way Boyd had looked at her all morning, seeing the thing under the surface. The part that matters is you came back from the edge when somebody handed you one job. You got that man behind the concrete. In this work, that's the whole measure of a person. Not whether you're scared, what you do with your hands while you are. She told him she was putting his name forward for the EOD apprentice track if he wanted it. He wanted it. She could see he wanted it before he said a word, the same way she had once wanted it. The way a certain kind of person is drawn, not to the noise, but to the quiet, deliberate work of standing between other people and the worst day of their lives. The work would teach him patience, or it would send him home. Either way, it would tell him the truth about himself, which is more than the gate had ever offered him. "It doesn't get easier," she told him. "You just get steadier. That's the whole job." Before she left the gate, she found Boyd at the shack. The two of them did not say much. People who have done the work rarely do. He told her he had seen a tech kneel over a culvert outside Kandahar 15 years before and wave his whole platoon through, and that he had never learned her name, and that he had thought of her every time he passed a gate since. Calloway listened. Then she told him the tech's name, because she had known him, because the community is smaller than the maps make it look, and Boyd's eyes went bright, and he looked away for a moment at the line of cars. They shook hands. Two people who walk toward things, recognizing each other across a parking lot at the end of a long day. Evening came down soft over the detachment. Calloway stood at her new bench and pinned the badge to her uniform, the crab, the old EOD insignia, the bomb and the laurels, the thing you earn by walking toward what others flee. The post settled behind her into the ordinary hum of a place that had not, in the end, lost anyone today. No formation, no salute. Just the quiet of a gate that would run a little differently tomorrow, and a young private somewhere across it who had found out what he was made of, and a sergeant who had found out the same thing about himself and would have to live inside the answer. Her phone buzzed once on the bench, a message from a number with no name, a presumed gone call sign at the top, one she had not seen in 3 years and had stopped expecting to. A teammate the rolls had listed as lost, a name she had grieved and folded away and not spoken since. Beneath the call sign, a single image, a dirt road, a wall of dried mud the color of the hills, the kind of road she had walked 100 times and would know in the dark. And beneath that, a place, a named province on the far side of an ocean. Helmand, a word that still tasted of dust and 2013. And 4 words. They're building again. Come. She read it once. She went still as stone, the way she had in the shade at 0840, the way she had on a road in 2013. Then she reached for her bag. Every soldier carries a story that few ever hear. Listen with your heart. Thank you for staying and watching. Subscribe to Honor Tales for more.